afternoon. This is Bob from BBD on this Wednesday, the 16th. Obviously, statements have been made by the government in the parliament, including by the defense minister, Rajnath Singh. The only thing that I don't really cotton to or I don't really support is this constant issue about, constant jibe about everybody supporting the soldier. Everybody is supporting the soldier, and that's not really the message. The message they seem to be trying to give is that anybody who speaks anything against the government as far as what's happening in the border is concerned is not standing by now by the soldier, and nothing could be further from the truth. And this is for all intelligent people to understand. This is not anti-national, right? And I mean, it's okay if they don't want to debate this in Parliament because it's a sensitive issue, and they have given a commitment to talk about it in a closed session with the opposition. Here's some interesting points that I'd like to know. There was a report in the Times of India by Anita Inder Singh, which says, on shifting unstable ground, India faces harsh realities as it navigates the China challenge and a swiftly changing world. Let me just say this. Swiftly changing, unstable. These are the kinds of situations that a country like India needs to grow and to position itself. If it's in a stable environment, middle powers like India that is trying to break out of the existing systems and establish themselves is extremely difficult. This is a God's given opportunity for India. The sad part is we've lost the plot as far as our economy is concerned and the fight against COVID is concerned, but we still have the necessary bandwidth and legs to ensure that in this shake and bake, India does get a position, and the tailwinds because of this issue with China, global issue with China, are going to help us big time. She actually makes a point that I've always been making, that Russia is not somebody that can be trusted. So she writes, whether or not recent peace talks in Moscow will increase the chances of ending Sino-Indian border dispute, the conflicting realities of India's friendship with Russia and the US underline that New Delhi should pay more attention to India's place in the global strategies of both the countries. Here, but more important, I mean, these guys in India, especially from this peace and conflict resolution, they don't have a real solution for peace and resolution. They always seem to be they always were tilted against the United States, were always pro-Russia and China, historically, right? Here he says, Russian Chinese top diplomats to discuss strategic partnership in conditions of pandemic was the headline and task. Russia and China. And India was going on about SCO and our EM meeting and our Rajnath meeting and all this stuff. And they were only concerned about Russia and China. However, as it says, just as a diplomatic move, and the task added 2 sentences later. Besides, they held a trilateral meeting with their Indian counterpart Subramaniam Jaishankar. Welcome to the high table, India. It's all about Russia and China. And I mean, that's Russia's interest. That's China's interest. Why is this Russia's interest? Rightly, she says that here. Russia and its comprehensive strategic partner, which is rising aggressive China, jointly challenge America's global primacy. That is what Russia's goal is at this point. Putin's, right? And he says, in India's absence, explained by China's intrusions into Ladakh, China's participation in Russia's Caucasian military drills in the 3rd week of September will upgrade its strategic and political value to Moscow. Chinese troops will be drawn from a unit involved in border clashes with India. Now, this is these are things that we should note importantly for while we make all these strategic decisions about Russia. He says, all social media and the other mouthpieces of the CCP and China are going on about China's advantage, rants the tabloid, is based on strength, and it must be prepared to completely defeat India's illusions through military actions. For India to provoke China is hitting a rock with an egg, right, folks. And where I think everybody loses the plot is when you talk about, since the Ladakh clashes in June, some Indians have favored an alliance with the US. But India's alliance hopefuls could start by questioning themselves. Is the US interested in a military pact with India? I think she's got the wrong plot. This is what it's not about. No country is going to come with guns and roses to India, right? India has to defend its own border, and that's sacrosanctly understood. And let me just replay something that a counter to what has been written by Seema Sirohi from Washington. Pre-election bye-bye. It says, memo to China. The Indo-Pacific strategy is slowly becoming a reality. Military agreements are being signed between countries, making the contours sharper and minds clearer despite the virus. India and the US have a flurry of meetings planned before the US elections on November 3rd to consolidate the gains made under President Donald Trump. The two countries are expected to conclude and sign the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement (BECA) on sharing geospatial intelligence during the next 2+2 dialogue. With BECA, India can get a closer look at Pakistan and all its bare necessities, training camps and all, and that is true for all the Chinese borders too, right? He says China, given the border situation with China, India will soon lease 2 drones from the US government for naval surveillance, while the procurement process for the sale of 30 armed Predator drones will drawn on. That what is important is we are leasing. This is, I mentioned this earlier. India should go lease. Right now it should lease the critical offensive equipment that will help us against China. And here she said that even the S-400 was first given to China before it came to India. I think we should junk the S-400. What good is the S-400 against China when China will know exactly how to counter it? We should instead go for the THAAD. That's more important, and that's what China doesn't understand, It further says India and the US are expected to sign a maritime information sharing agreement to bolster the most promising area of cooperation. Then it says dates and locations are also being finalized for a meeting of the Quad foreign ministers and a meeting of the Indian-US National Security Advisor. Then the US signed the other important part, which I guess she missed, is, and I had mentioned it yesterday, then the US signed a defense framework agreement with the Maldives on September 10th to deepen relations and to maintain peace and security in the Indian Ocean. India welcomed it. A measure of change in outlook. This is what I mentioned yesterday, if you remember. And somebody is reporting that today. How good am I? Oh, I'm sorry. That's conceited. Then it says, the Chinese spin after the meeting in Moscow between Jaishankar and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is the latest example of Beijing's relentless pushing of fake news. And we should be careful. And just see what's happening in Russia. Russian opposition wins regional seats. Then you have a case where Putin, Lushenko discuss integration. Now this is going to create a major issue for the Russians and the Europeans, especially Germany. And Germany will have to rethink what it's going to do with China, Angela Merkel, because Russia and China now seem to be getting joined at the hip. Then what is happening for us critically that we should observe? Japan feels tugged from China and US, and we should be watching it carefully. As this Wall Street Journal replies, Tokyo. Yoshuki Kasai, longtime boss of Japan's biggest bullet train line, says he thinks Tokyo's alliance with the US comes first and China needs to hear the message. But there is another guy, Hiroaki Nakanishi, head of Japan's most powerful business federation, says he thinks that the attitude is self-defeating. After all, it works to build ties with China. This is the problem that is going to be facing the new possible prime minister that is going to replace Abe. Well, that's happening. We have a report, small report. Indonesia confronts Chinese ship which refused to leave. But then the Indonesian Maritime Security Agency says we asked them to move out, but then insisted that it is China's. They insisted that it was China's 9-line territory. Our officers argued with them until they moved on. We need to be critically involved, watching all this space. And as I said, nothing is happening on the border. It says China deploys 10,000 on south bank of Pangong Tso. Eyeball to eyeball deployment by both sides. Forget what Wang Yi is saying. Forget what Sun Dong is saying. The reality is quite different. The 5-point program is going nowhere. Then it says, and that's the good part, India defeats China for seat at prestigious UN body for women. India and United States must ensure China does not win or has a great good fight wherever any seat for any UN agency comes up for fight. India should not drop its guard at all. And look at what's happening. This is obviously with the help of China. It says Dovell walks out of SCO meet to protest China's dirty map trick. Map showed JNK in park. Russia slams provocation. Well, what's the point of slamming the provocation? Russia You should have stopped it in the first place. It's in your hometown. You've embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed a guest like India. Then you have this report by about all the snooping that's going on by Binayak Das Gupta. Zenahu data case, how to think about Chinese surveillance. Essentially, yes, China is watching, but Zenahu data is likely to have contributed only a small portion of its peripheral vision. What it might be, but we can't take our eyes. This is peripheral vision, but they've got their hands right inside out, because what you see here is a report in the UK Times. Chinese firm compiled data base of 40,000 leading Britons. Then you have this report which is in the New York Times. Chinese company harvests data of prominent Americans. But this is unfair, because there's a report by Stephen Lee Myers which says US ambassador in Beijing to step down next month. Why is he stepping down? What are the reasons? Last week the State Department complained that the People's Daily, the main newspaper of Communist Party, refused to publish an op-ed by Branstad, who hoped to take his message directly to Chinese readers, as his counterpart in Washington, Sui Tinkai, often does with Americans. The People's Daily response once again exposes the Chinese Communist Party's fear of free speech and serious intellectual debate, as well as Beijing's hypocrisy when it complains about lack of fair and reciprocal treatment in other countries. This is true. What is true for the United States and the steps and what is being suggested in the article is also true for India. I'm quite sure the Indian ambassador in China is not getting his space in any op-ed pieces. I mean, it's absolutely insane how hit the ambassador of China here is constantly allowed to run riot over and give his projections of his viewpoint. But here, let's see. The information is tricky and is limited. For example, we don't hear about the fact that China targets Mongolia protesters, which was a news item by Eva Xiao in UK Times. Nor, as Harsha Kakkar writes, a battle on China's hands, and this is an important thing that we should know. He says, expecting soft, inexperienced and family-dependent troops to assault a voluntary army comprising of battle-hardened trained soldiers is asking for the moon. Releasing Kargil and Siachen videos as part of counter-propaganda warfare would make the Chinese realize that the current Indian army is made of. Chinese propaganda videos of exercise firing would pale in comparison to the accurate Indian firing during the Kargil war against the heights occupied by Pakistan. And this is important. Then it says, within India, many are influenced by writings in Chinese state-controlled media, which projects topics determined by the CCP. On the other hand, India has no formal organization to counter propaganda projected by the Chinese. Unless this is done, Indians would never realize the truth and continue being influenced and keep being threatened constantly and being told that we are weaker. That should never be allowed to happen. As you know how nasty these people are, then they go and they just don't mend their ways. As a Chinese Foreign Ministry official, Lu Kang, told the Globe and Mail, Canada only country willing to detain Meng, China says. UK asked dozens of countries to arrest Huawei executive, senior Beijing official says, and none of them obliged except Canada, saying that Canada is weak and must stand on its own. How undiplomatic a behavior can that be, right?